The poet Mary Oliver has become my Easter laureate. She says in this beautiful poem, "The singular and cheerful life," let us listen together. "The singular and cheerful life of any flower in anyone's garden, or any still unowned field, if there are any, catches me by the heart, by its color, by its obedience to the holiest of laws. Be alive until you are not. Ragweed, pale violet, blue thistle, morning glories curling through the field corn. And those princes of everything, green, the grasses, of which there are truly an unaccountable company, each on its singular stem striving to rise and ripen. What in the earth world is there not to be amazed by and to be studied by and to cherish? Oh, my dear heart, my own dear heart, full of hesitations and questions, choices of directions. Look at the world. Behold the morning glory, the meanest flower, the ragweed, the thistle. Look at the grass. Be alive, friends, until you are not. Here, Oliver is known for encouraging us into our one wild and precious life while we have it. It reminds us of the inspiration all around us, woven into the very fabric of nature, each bud, a persistent cry out into the precious and fleeting reality of its mission and its purpose. Be alive with every ounce of who you are until the end comes. But today, the end is not so final. We all know the tantalizing bouquets of flowers, even when they are snipped right there off the stalk. Still, if you tenderly handle them underwater, cut at a diagonal, and maybe you add a little nutrients into that face, yes, then the hardy beauty can adorn our sacred space, a bonus beauty that teaches us something of the extended bonus material that Christ grants us. Suddenly the flowers and their living and their extension can teach us something of Christ. I want to share the story that Rabbi Amy Robertson, living in Georgia, in her yard there is a beautiful Japanese magnolia. And because it's the South, it springs a little bit earlier, and it's a big sign of the spring, and it's big in her yard, centrally located there, and it outstretches its branches. It's so seasonally and annually beautiful that when her daughter was 2 years old, she dubbed it the God tree. That's right, you can go and sit under its petals and its branches and just look in majesty and say, yep, I doubt it, there are hesitations in my spirit, but there's gotta be a God. You can get on the swing that's right there on one of the branches and go back and forth, and on a lazy day or when you need a pause in the midst of your hectic, busyness, there, the God tree might be ready for you. Now, they got in the habit every year of having a God tree party, just when it would bloom, an opportunity to welcome the spring and to welcome this delight in the centrally located place, right in their home, right in their yard. And so you never know when that day is going to be. You can't pre-plan for it. You can't say in 3 days we will, The nature of resurrection is it cascades from Christ down the centuries, is you just never know when it might pop up. But when it starts to, and when the blossoms are in their full bloom, that's when you invite the neighbors over. And you say, swing on our branches. Let us delight under a picnic, under this gazing God tree. But friends, as it happens, right in the season, late winter, there was sewer trouble. Has this ever happened to you in your yard? And so the county crew came, and she says, the county crew, much to be desired. They came in with their rumbling and their hammers and ready to get and tackle that which was underneath, the sewer problem that needs fixing. And so there was a concern and a wringing of the hands. Would it take some of the energy and the life force of earth underneath that tree? But no, it was fully intact. But nonetheless, the crews in their rumbling, they left some tragedy. For you see, when one of the utility vehicles was angling its way on that driveway, guess what happened? A beautiful, glorious branch knocked, falling to the ground. Can you hear the angels cry out as a big branch of the God tree found its way to the ground? And there was cracks in the driveway, and there was a mess that was made. And so they went out to mourn that limb. And they were about to say goodbye, thankfully, to those county crews, but please come back and clean up. Oh, we will, they said. Never showing up, it seemed. And this big branch, they drug it to the other side of the yard, needing to mourn in late winter that which falls out of our control, and sometimes by accident, and sometimes by carelessness. For didn't they know it was the God tree? Friends, we come to Golgotha here on the tomb. Didn't they know that it was the God man? The scene of death and the resting place of movement of hope has come to a grinding halt as the underbelly, the sewer, is exposed, a seizing, an arrest, a trial, a torture, and yes, a crucifixion. Shoulders shut up in that place before the stone, guarding a gnarled body. The deed has been done. Jesus has fallen. The lives of the disciples are ripped to shreds. And then a fearsome earthquake. Can you imagine? It comes and it shakes and it rolls a giant stone out from its assigned place. How many have lived through the quaking of the grounds? Karen, who joins us sometimes on Zoom from New Zealand, had her home displaced from the quake. And do you remember back when we were collecting winter clothes, because what happened in Turkey and Syria? But when the earth rumbles, so often homes are destroyed and people no longer see things like the God tree standing in their yards. My dear heart, my own dear heart, can we stand alongside what must have been a freakishly neon ghoulish angel? Can you see it? White and illustrious, coming out from the stone and demanding that you turn about and you recognize a truth for which your grief heart doesn't seem to have space. But to be Mary or Magdalene or to be us today, to have the angel come and say there is a way out of no way. That I need you to turn around, and Jesus, that one you had followed, the one of love, has just been here. Go chase him down the street. And you go to move, but your legs don't work anymore quite properly. And so it is out of the magic of your own beauty and resurrection that your body comes back and springs into life out of grief. Perhaps you know this out of your own grief this year. Someone has passed and taken with him all that seems to be great and wonderful of life. But again, slowly blossoming, slowly taking shape as the truth settles in on the spirit, where fear and joy can mingle together in the same body. First the right leg, like Jell-O, and then the second. And can you imagine how quickly you start to move right and left as the joy starts to dance in your being? Lord of the dance. Bring me to that place on the intersection of my grief and my sorrow in the street. Let me catch up with Jesus. Let me catch up with the grief that can be no more, for the God tree may just start to be blossoming again. Can you hear it, friends? Be alive until you are not, full of hesitations, questions, choices of direction. Here, see the angel point in one specific direction, of which we are all called in the irresistible resurrection. We come full of our own doubts. We come looking out, and perhaps take a moment now for it to sit on your heart with where you have seen death. Death that consumes our current generation. Death with the temperature turned up on our climate. And as it hit home in my home state and heart just these last couple of weeks, death of our own doing as teachers and children, like the 9-year-old pastor's daughter that was among those slain in a Nashville classroom as they were learning. A deep despair pulls the trigger. It nails to the cross in the hands of despairing people with access to the machines of war, automatic, unregulated. Can we say that when we look out and see that there are laws that don't protect when money is exchanged with those who make the weapons? Isn't it like the governing authority is hastening the execution of innocents? We see the mounting casualties as we look out and are reminded, despite ourselves, that there was a man who dared to do things, healed on the Sabbath, ate with sinners, upturned tables in the temple. And even when his own disciple took a sword and slashed the ear of the soldier who would come for him, what did he do? But he reached out and healed him. Here's one whose life was traded for a bag of coins, trampled grass, severed branch, murdered body. But here, friends, is when we start to gain feeling back in our legs. We can see that we, and all the germinating greenness of which we have been created, that the blades of grass are rising within us, so that we look out and we try to gain confidence from those who are yet speaking into the places of death in our world and gathering on Capitol steps in ways that are peacefully protesting that which is continuing to proclaim that there is a way out of no way. Can you hear it? The germinating that comes in one leg of yours and then the other, as we can't help but dance along the journey until we are eye to eye to the feet of Jesus, so that no more as they go to the movie theater or the library or the classroom or the house of worship, no more would they fall in a violent death too early. Not one more friend, may this be our Easter blessing, would die from the perishing of a gun. That those who died, have died, are not dying in vain. While we yet live, they inspire us onward. Oh, my dear heart, that we might be alive until we are not. There are 100 ways that we can ache, whether it's the news cycle that takes you in and makes your heart continually break, whether it's a relationship that is continuing to come to an end, but it is so hard to let go, whether you're facing the crippling reality of something that is slowing your body down and down, or whether you're coming off of a closing of a dear church, or the stretching and visioning of church as you have known it here. Friends, the Spirit of Christ will not stop coming to life. As much as we try to roll that stone back and be found in our own despair, as much as we would be stuck to the spot or dragged to another and be so outside the rays of God's blessed blossoms, a chain of being is passed from one branch to another. Century upon century, we take Easter encouragement that we can be alive until we are not, but we need to be alive as budding as Christ, the body would, regenerating all the time, so that until we are not does not end with a period, but a keep on going. May grief itself not silence us, that we would go out running into the streets, having something to say. Mary Magdalene, we ask that she might show us the way. Do you remember the God tree limb sitting on the other side of the torn up yard? So it was that Robertson's family refused to move anything. The evidence of the destruction of which had been done. The county will come back, they said. So we leave the rumbling of the driveway in its place and this branch as evidence of what has taken place. But guess what? The spring came anyway. And guess what started to happen to that God tree? Started blooming again. Started blooming again so that you look out your window one day and it is in full fruition and you can't help but go out and get the neighbors, despite the fact that the sewer might still be slightly exposed. And as you go out, you see the miraculous nature of what has happened to that branch lying on the other side of the yard. When it had fallen, there were just tiny, tiny little buds on it. So sad to see a death so early. But as was mysterious and confounding and bewildering, fit for an Easter morning, they go out and what do they see? But upon this branch, not just one little blossom, but all along this fallen limb, buds fully in blossom. So that this branch on the other side of the yard, you can't tell the difference from the one that's still attached. A little disfigured, dismembered, a little disconcerting. She did not know what to do with this information except keep on having the God party. And perhaps can you imagine that she might invite a loving gathering up and picking up of that limb and taking it back to the tree as evidence that despite our biggest errors, our machinations, the death that would come, that's still gathered there on that limb is resurrection. The whole branch bloomed 2 months after it had fallen. It can be eerie to see something take life when it's supposed to be dead. We think of Isaiah's stump of Jesse, shoots coming out of an unlikely, seemingly cut off and dying place. But God's tree and that blossoming branch can help us believe. Friends, Christ invites us to keep blossoming on earth as it is in heaven, to keep tasting and seeing here at the table the goodness of our God, and to take in signs of extended life with us from Easter, peaceably to the council chamber, the courthouse, the Capitol, peaceably as we come back to be a spiritual home and be a feeding place that blossoms would continue to germinate. Today, we take the little gorgeous stems that have been prepared so beautifully and painstakingly for you as signs of the resurrection when you go from this place. For buds that are taken gingerly and placed under water and cut at a diagonal can be put in a vase. And it's an extension. It's the bonus material of Easter to remind us to be alive until we are not. And then perhaps at the end to compost and keep the regenerative cycle of life going. And just when we think there is no more, to be alive and then we are not, comma, to keep blossoming together. Christ has risen, friends. Christ has risen indeed. Amen.